Okay, beer crates. These are some primitive structures. I'm an architect. I teach architecture. I'm quite interested in looking at the sort of everyday and almost sort of throwaway objects that you find that you can build structures with. That's a teepee up there. That's an igloo. That's a wigwam, and that's a shear. I'm already behind. This is an architect in Japan who, about sort of 15, 20 years ago, started building buildings out of disposable objects. These are the inners, cardboard tubes of that you buy when you buy a carpet. He's sort of perfected and developed these techniques into dome structures. This is in Chile in a very dry climate, so it's not necessarily prone to any sort of weather conditions that we might have in northern Europe. These have developed sort of further and further and got more and more imaginative and experimental. Again, these are sort of a grid shell dome structure that's made out of cardboard tubes. These are still throwaway objects that aren't necessarily designed for that purpose. They do have a practical use. These are the Kobe earthquake shelters that after the earthquake, and they were used for quite a long period of time. That was the first time I'd seen sort of beer crates used as a part of a structure. It was around that time that I decided to develop the idea of trying to build something out of beer crates. Beer crates in England are sort of rubbish and flimsy. These are German, superior beer crates. I first moved to Bristol. I'd started developing this idea of a pavilion that could be used for part of the Brunel exhibition, 200 Years of Brunel. I first looked at Brunel and, imagine this big sort of engineering, heavy engineering. I realised that actually it's very refined and very delicate and quite small and very technical and innovative. And this leads on to architecture and structures that are about journeys and are romantic. Taking a fantastic German beer crate, obviously if you stack them up one on top of each other, they just fall over. As we see with those primitive structures, what you need to be able to do is create openings and span. If you stack them or form them into a panel, that you can then brick bond them as you would sort of bonding. If you then tie them vertically, then they become solid structures and you can span openings. So that's what we created here. It's a 4 panel high by 8 metre long panel. With a very small number of panels, there's only about 3 different panels, we was able to create a structure that had openings. So this is the first sort of experiment. We was using panels of beer crates. This moves on to sort of quite heavy sort of technical stuff about how we can use these beer crates without actually breaking down their structural efficiency. So we use the holes that are already in them. The handles are used to tie everything together. We use off-the-shelf metal plates and sprung washers to tie everything together. And then there are vertical ties that run sort of top to bottom that hold it all together. There's a crinkly tin roof that's uninsulated that basically keeps the rain off. And then we move on to a plan where we return back to Brunel and think about a very slim structure that doesn't have to span very far, which is suitable for the sort of structural form, but we create a journey that you walk along. There is the spanning element between the top is some preformed aluminium trusses that are used in stage sets. Linked between those are some electric cables with some electric tubes to give lighting in the pavilion, so that at night time you can sort of the building glows. That's the only sort of equipment that's actually inside. There are some, these are the lighting cables that are looped through the trusses. There is a pole that ties these trusses together at the top level, which is used for hanging art off. So it ended up being a temporary mobile art gallery that could be taken down and re-erected. There were some benches, which was the first thing that we made as an experiment to see how these things could tie together and be tightened up without cracking the crates. The gates were made out of steel, and that was the proposal that we did for the final competition, which actually didn't win the one anything to do with the Brunel 200, but has subsequently won competitions. The idea was that the panels would break down and would form into the shipping container. The shipping container would then move around to different venues. When it turns up at a venue, everything gets moved out and gets erected, and the shipping container gets used as a shop and security for the exhibits.